welcome to Elevate Us. So, Elevate Us is just a forward moving action. What I started maybe in 2020, we put Elevate Us together as a way to help Black people, start elevating ourselves and start getting ourselves out of what we see as being the norm, and getting ourselves onto a higher platform. Stop, being stuck in the mind frame of survival and can't, and start, putting ourselves in a position where we can start, progressing, and stop always focusing on our past and start looking towards our future. So, just a quick background on me. I am originally from California. I was born in SoCal, born in Inglewood. And my mom, by the time I was 2 years old, she moved us out of Inglewood, moved us into a suburban town called Azusa. And Azusa was an all white town. I think in that whole town that we lived in, there was probably maybe two other Black families that lived there. So, we went through a lot with racism. And a lot of times when you tell people that you were in Southern California and you dealt with racism, they think that maybe the South had it worse or whatever, but we really had a bad experience with it. So much so that I started to think that my name was Nigger, not the A, the ER, the hard ER. So, because that's what the kids were calling me on a constant basis. So just growing up, we had that battle, fighting with them, the elements outside of our home, but also inside of my home. I'm being so transparent nowadays. It's like we have all these uncomfortable conversations that we don't want to talk about, and the uncomfortable conversations is what's causing us to remain in our past. That's what keeps us there, because we hold on to these things. But in my family, my dad was abusive, and there was a lot that went on in my home. And I did, as a child, I suffered the same thing that probably, if you sit in a room with 100 Black women, about 70 of those Black women are going to say that they suffered some form of sexual abuse, molestation, rape, whatever. So we've all kind of suffered at that the results of these past. So, and it's hard to talk about. It's uncomfortable. People have a hard time with it. But that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to unpack some things. We need to start unpacking these things, because what's happening is, we as Black people in America, we're kind of, living so much in our past that we don't know how to move forward. So I always ask the question, you know, are we stuck in slavery still too long? Are we lingering on to slavery so long that we continue to talk about it, we continue to see movies about it, we continue to have all these images of it, and it was, we know it was a horrible past, and we know it's what has framed us into what we are today. But we cannot continue to live in the emotions and the feelings of that past, because if you live in the past, that's where you stay. So what we have to start doing is learning how to live into a vision of the future and be who we want to become, and not who we have been conditioned to be. In this society that we live in, we've had a lot of conditioning and we've had a lot of programming. And we've been programmed by television, we've been programmed by music, we've been programmed by schools, we've been programmed by our jobs. Everything that we learn, every behavior that we have, every bit of our personality traits, all comes from us being conditioned and being programmed by something. And what happens is we let all of these outer experiences form and shape who we are today. So, therefore, we're giving so much power to all these different outer forces to make us who we are, that we don't get a chance to become our own true self. So that's where, we have to really kind of sit down, and, when you come from a long trip and you got the suitcase and you go throw the suitcase in the corner of the room and you don't unpack it for a little while, and then it just sits there, and next thing you know, you looking and you're like, man, this is a mess. Yes, it's a mess because you're not unpacking these things. So, just like coming off of that long trip, we have to sit down and we have to unpack all of these things. We have to unpack these issues, and that's where we have to start. We have to start making movement. We have to start having action. As a community of people, we talk about all the things that we want to do. We talk about where we want to be, and we want to talk about how things can be different. And it's because we live in this in this society where we're really allowing someone to make us who we are, and that's what we have to get out of. So anyway, you know I always I tell people that we have to deprogram before we reprogram. So we have to literally, you got to kind of go back. You got to go back to that little self. So, and for us, for Black people, honestly, I'm gonna get a little deep because it goes further back than us going to our little selves. When you think about who we were as a people before we were even brought to this country, you have to think about who our ancestors were. You have to think about how they were living. You have to think about what traditions and cultures they had, which of course we don't know these things because we have a disconnect with that. But the reason why slavery has been as successful as it is because even our ancestors, they all weren't on the same vibe. They weren't even speaking the same languages. You could go from just from one tribe to the next tribe and they spoke a different dialect. They all spoke different languages. So there was a lack of communication ingrained in us all the way going back, all the way going back to the very beginning of this thing. So, within our communities, we've always had a lack of communication with each other, and it goes deep. It's something that goes really deep. And this man that brought us over here, he knew this, and he was very strategic with the way that he put this thing together because they knew that we all lacked that communication. So even getting us here and putting us together, they were able to control us better. How can we organize if we don't even communicate with each other properly? You know, and that's where we're at today. Is how do you organize? How do we come together? We don't even communicate with each other properly. So we got to kind of start there, but it all starts on an individual basis. You got to start with yourself, and you got to go back, and you got to look at your future. You got to look at what if you have a traumatic past. If you had something that happened to you when you were little, and from that time, that trauma created, fear inside of you. And now you've lived your life on survival and fear. And every single day you step into the world and you go in and you're operating every person that you come in contact with, everything that you do, every decision that you make, it's all ingrained in survival and fear. And it's impossible to make smart decisions in life, in anything, period, when those decisions come from survival and fear. So you got to go back and you got to look at the trauma, right? You got to look at what happened to you. And you got to ask yourself, it was bad. And you know that there was a person that was at the forefront of that trauma. But you survived it, right? You made it through the trauma. You didn't die. You know, I know some people have some things that that has happened to them that may be worse than others, but the point is you survived it, right? So you became a survivor even though you lived in survival. So that right there built some strength in you. So now now you've got the survival mechanisms built within you. So then you got to go back and look again, and you got to ask yourself, rather than looking at every single bad thing that happened in your life, what are some of the good things? Some people may say none. Some people may have been abused from the moment they hit the planet. Some people may, have never have experienced a good moment in their life. But that is because, you have to look at your trauma as a pathway. I know it's hard for some people to think that way, but you have to look at it as It had there is a reason why this trauma happened to you. There's a reason why these things happen. There's nothing in life that happens without reason. So you have to step back and you have to ask yourself, what was it preparing me for? What was it doing? Why did I go through this trauma? Why did this happen to me? But what we have to remember is when we're unpacking these things, it's like you just sit down and you write down everything that happened. And then you're writing down who caused it or what caused it or how it was caused. But when you look at all the facets of it, then you start to realize that you weren't the cause of the trauma. It wasn't you. You had nothing to do with it, especially if you're a child. Especially if you're just entering this world and there was some external force made, if that external force was a mother, a father, a brother, a cousin, an uncle, whatever that external force was that caused that trauma, it wasn't you. You weren't the cause of that trauma. You weren't the one that caused it to happen. So now you have to say to yourself, well, there was a reason why this trauma happened to me. You're right. So you have to look at the reasoning of everything. And I know, as Black people, we look at things and we say, why do we always have to suffer? Why are we always the ones that, have this trauma? Why are we always the ones that this happens to or that happens to? But what happens when we do that is we start to live for our trauma. We start to live it. We live so much in this trauma that we don't know how to let go of the trauma, and we start to almost have we romanticize our trauma, and it becomes a part of our being, and it becomes a part of who we are, and we live in it every single day. And so now this trauma it shapes your personality, because every single day that you think about what you went through, it's like you relive those moments over and over and over again, right? So you continuously, every single day, you wake up and you think about, what you're going to do for the day, and because you haven't unpacked your trauma or you haven't really, gone through it or talked about it, every single day it's at the back of your mind, so it's like, oh man, this is happening in my life. It happened because when I was a little girl, I was molested. That's kind of the way that you live in your trauma. So everything that happens to you in your life, you start to blame it on what happened to you as a little girl, right? Or as a little boy. And it's like you then start to create this personality. And that personality, again, like I said, is built in fear and it's built in anger, it's built in shame, and it's built in, guilt. So now, because of that, you go into your survival mechanisms and your personality becomes hard and it becomes rigid and it becomes aggressive and it becomes, it's angry. So you're walking around on a daily basis carrying all this baggage. So now every person that you interact with is going to become a product of that personality trait that you're carrying on. So, how do you get rid of these personalities? How do you get rid of these things? The only way that you get rid of this is you unpack your trauma and then you stop living in it. You know, it's like, do you want to live in your past, or do you want to start being in the vision of a future? Do you want to start seeing what the future can look like if you create the future to be what you want it to be? And that's kind of like with slavery. So I'll get back to that. In this country, we are constantly looking back at what has happened to us. And we constantly live in this society where, we're saying, well, I can't get a job because of slavery. And I can't go to school because of slavery. I can't get no money because of slavery, and some people use it as a crutch more than others. Of course, I'm not talking about everybody, because when we think about, our circumstances and we think of environmental factors and we, where we grew up and what household we were grown into, a lot of people think, well, they're in a impoverished area and they don't have all the same opportunities as this person or whatever. But, that's not true, because when you think about a lot of success stories, A lot of people that have success stories, they come out of these environments. They come out of places where, they had single mothers, and or they had, they didn't have any money, or their mom was on crack, or dad was on drugs, dad was gone. You hear these stories all the time. But what makes them so special to where they can be in the same environment as you? They can be in the same environment as one person, but they climb themselves out of it. The difference is they refused to let their past or let their environment or their conditions control who they were going to be. That's because within them, within their minds, they saw a future for themselves, and they lived in the vision of that future. So they constantly worked, they constantly moved, they constantly had action towards that future that they saw for themselves. Because it's like when you see that future for yourself, that's all you're going to move towards because it looks good. Especially if, the predictable future is you're living in your trauma, you're living in your past, and you already, kind of foresee yourself staying stagnant, staying in the same place that you're at. That's because you're still living in your past. But someone that's not living in their past anymore and they're living in that future, that means that they have cut off. They have already unpacked that past. They have already put every bit of it away, right? They closed the door to that because that was something that already shaped and molded you into who you are. But now you're looking into this future and you see this future and it looks beautiful and this is where you want to be, so that's where you're going to work towards. And that's what we have to do as Black people in this country. We have to start closing the doors to slavery. And I'm not saying that, we completely forget that it happened, because we'll never forget. That's called, history. That's our history. And that's, the foundation of who we are and what we have built ourselves on. But you cannot become a victim. We have to get out of a victim mentality. And a victim mentality is, well, this country owes us, so I'm going to go get food stamps, or this country owes me, so I'm going to try to get every resource that is available to me. And you have to remember that, you're dealing with people that really that don't they don't care about you. They don't care about your future. They don't care about, whether you do good in life or not. Pretty much their whole economy is built off of you and off of what you do and off of the money that you spend. So every single dime that they give you, whether it's in food stamps or whether it's in, welfare or whatever, you put it right back into their economy. So the money never leaves their hands anyway. And that's the mentality that we have to get out of. We have to get more into the mentality of getting out of these systems and stop trying to depend on someone that doesn't care about us, that doesn't care about our future, doesn't care about our children, doesn't care anything about us. And we have to get out of depending on them so much. We depend on them for everything that we do, and we're not dependent on ourselves. So the reason why I started asking this question is my daughter, she's in South Africa. She actually quit her job. She got out of the matrix and she quit her job to go travel the world. And as she's in South Africa, and she's talking to the Africans, their thought process is, you guys are still tripping off of slavery. And at first I got mad. I'm like, what? How dare you? We over here in slavery because your people sold us to the Europeans, and that's why we're here. But then when she sent me video of their conditions and how they're living and the resources that they have compared to the resources that we have, then you start to look at things a little bit differently. They're in bad situations. Their housing is horrible. There was a neighborhood where the whole neighborhood shared porta potties, so they don't even have plumbing inside of their homes. And then I started asking the question, like, with the available resources that we have and in the country that we live in, are we holding on to it too long? Are we, we're over here waiting for them for the next thing that they're going to give us. Even through COVID, we waited for stimulus money. We waited for unemployment money, and we waited for all these things. And I we did something a little different during COVID. I jumped up and started a business along with a whole bunch of other people because we saw an opportunity. That was an opportunity for us to get out there and see a situation. So some people were mostly capitalizing off of it, which is fine. That's what you want to do. But I saw it as an opportunity for people are home now, people are more aware, people are waking up, and that's when we had a really great awakening with a lot of us. We started to realize that because you're going to a job every single day, right? You're stuck every day. You go to this job, you come home, you see your family for a few minutes, cook dinner, go to bed, and you go back and do the same thing. So that's the matrix. That's when you get stuck in that system where you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again, and you get so blinded by this system. You're just so conditioned to it that you don't see anything else going on around you. But then COVID hits and everybody's at home, right? So now you're not going to that job. And now you're just looking around like, man, I've been at this job all this time and I've been missing out on life. And black people started traveling and we started getting out. We started going places, and there's a whole pandemic going on, but we was out there. We was out in the streets and we was doing things and we was moving because that broke us free from this matrix that we've been in. It broke us free and we were able to see things in a different light. We were like, huh, maybe I don't need to depend on this. Maybe I can do something different. Maybe I can go create a different life for myself. And then that's where we start seeing like we are very dependent on their systems. So again, I say, how long are we going to stay in this slavery mindset? How long are we going to continue to say that our conditions today are still based on what happened, during slavery times? And I don't want anyone to get, angry or upset because I will never disrespect what my ancestors went through. So my grandmother was born in a field. I'm older, so I'm a little closer connected to slavery than some of the you millennials out there. So I already know I would never disrespect it. And even though my grandmother born in 1914 and she grew up in a time where so much is still going on, and they actually there was a town in Oklahoma, Boley, Oklahoma. It was an all black town. My grandmother and my grandfather, they lived there, and then white folks came and took over the whole town and kicked everybody out, and they were all homeless and they had to go regroup. So we these are stories and these are things that have happened to us, but my grandmother, she still remained the sweetest person you ever want to meet in life. And she had to she endured so much. They lost a lot, and they had to they lost everything, went rebuild, had all their children with them, and moved here, moved there until they finally settled in. But she never lived in that. She didn't continue to live in those moments. She just kept looking forward to the future that she wanted to create for herself. So that's what we have to learn how to do. And I know a lot of people are like, well, how do we do that? How do if you've never felt love, if nobody's ever loved you, how do you start feeling love? The first thing you have to do is you have to think about the future that you want for yourself, right? So you see what you want, you see where you want to be, and now you start to look at, even if you're going to look at material things, say you want nice cars and you want houses. You have to look beyond the material things though, and you have to look at, how is it going to make me feel? How am I going to feel when I get that car? How will I feel when I get this house? What's the emotions I'm going to be feeling when I accomplish and I get these things, right? So you look beyond the material and you look at the emotion of it, right? So you start writing down, close your eyes and start writing down. Let me see. If I get this car, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to feel proud. It's going to make me feel good, right? And if I get this house, then I'm going to feel secure. I'm going to feel safe. I'm going to feel, you'll start feeling all these different emotions, right? Write down the emotions of how you're going to feel when you acquire these things, right? Once you write down those emotions, then you start to connect. You start to connect with these emotions. And that's the feeling that you want. It's not so much that you want the car. It's not so much that you want the house. You want the emotions that are attached to these material things. And that's when you finally figure out how to achieve those emotions, then that's when you'll have real freedom. We have to think that, you have to remember that love is living in omnipotent vibrational energy. That's what love is. Love is it's a feeling, and it's an emotion. And when you receive proper love, it's a vibrational energy that you vibrate so high, and your body starts to feel it, and you start feeling good, and you get flooded with emotion, and you become happy, and you feel good, and you let down survival mode. Your shoulders drop a little bit, you smile, and you start to kind of look at yourself or look at things differently. You start looking at the world differently. But what we have to understand is that we look at ourselves as separate entities. And when you start to really understand our energy, our vibrational energy, you'll start to realize that there's a connectedness in the human experience. That within this human experience that we go through, we're all connected. All of our energies are connected. But where we live and what we do, it makes us feel separate. So when you feel separate, then you just protect your own energy field around you. But when you realize that it's not separate and that we're all connected, then you start to emit love, because then you start to love all the energies that are around you. So once you start learning, and then once you get into that love, once you start feeling that vibrational energy, then that's the airwaves that you're putting out there. You start sending out all these different waves of love, and love is going to come back to you. That's just the way that it works. Whatever energy you send out, then that's the energy that you're going to receive. So that's how you learn to love when you feel like you've never been loved. Is you start to, well, just like I said, start to imagine the things that you want when you so call, you know, make it, get rich. And then you think about these things, these material things, and then you think about the emotion behind it. And once you connect that emotion more so than that material object, then that's the feeling that you're going for. Is you're just trying to make that emotional connection so that you can feel that happiness, so that you can feel that abundance. A lot of us have gotten into this thing of manifesting. And, we sit down and we write down, I'm going to manifest a house. I'm going to manifest a house. I'm sorry, a car. I'm going to manifest, a man, true love. And it's so good to be in these spaces of manifesting, but excuse me, you're not going to manifest anything. Nothing's going to come to you if you're living in the same stagnant energy. If you're living in negative, stagnant energy, then it's hard to manifest anything good to you, because at the same time that you're trying to send out this energy to receive abundance, you're living in this energy of negativity, and those two, those two can't come together. So you have to change your personality before you can manifest anything. You have to change who you are. You have to change your being, and all of that starts with personality traits. Why and where? What are our personality traits? Again, it goes back to your childhood. It goes back to what you've been conditioned to be. If you're someone who's angry and aggressive, and you're someone who is constantly walking around with a negative vibe, then you're always going to attract everything negative to you. And the way that you stop that is you start to be conscious of it. You start paying attention to it. Start looking at your day as you go along, and look how you treat people and look how you talk to people. And the way I had to fix myself was just driving in traffic, right? People would cut me off and I would be mad, and going off and cussing them out. And my daughter, she's like, "Mom, they can't hear you." So your anger right now is just, you having a whole little fit and a whole episode by yourself because the person already drove off. They're not paying attention to you, right? So it's like you have to stop and you have to think about it. Why am I acting like this? Because we feel as human beings, we want to be respected. And the minute somebody disrespects us, then we have a fit, because you just disrespected me. But how do you get respect? You get respect by giving respect and by giving love. People, honestly, I've said this for years, and the true answers to knowledge and wisdom on this planet is love. Living in omnipotent vibrational energy. That's it. Once you learn how to love, then everything changes. Your whole world changes. Your whole full spectrum will come full circle once you start learning how to love. And there's so many people that walk around with tough personas. I like I said, I ran the streets of LA, and I've been around some folks. I've been around some folks. I've been around, I sat in rooms with people that didn't care about taking a life. I've been there. And you look at all of them, and you look at, the way that they carry themselves. So their mentality, of course, is just, we going out here to get it. We going out here to get what we got to get. And there's no regard for other human life. And when you're living your life and you're not concerned about other human life, then you're not having a true human experience. You're not having that. You're not having a, I don't want to get overly complicated, but, when you live in like a quantum field, that's when you're living more in your subconscious and you're living outside of this material world. But when you live in this material world, then you see yourself as an individual. But when you live in more in a quantum field and you live in more in the subconscious, then you'll see the connectedness of energy. You'll start to see all the energies coming together. But when we're here and we're on this material world, we're looking at ourselves as individuals. And when you see yourself as an individual, then you're only protecting yourself and you're only protecting that, what's around you. But then that puts you, again, like I said, that puts you into that survival mode. And when you're in that survival mode, when you're in survival, what are you doing? You're running, you're fighting. And your body, you can't constantly stay in survival mode. You can't constantly fight. You can't constantly be running, because when you do that, then your body is going to give out on you, of course. So, you have to get yourself out of survival mode, and you have to get yourself into, I listen, I already know that you ain't gonna sit here with no thug and he ain't gonna just jump out of his survival mode right into a loving mode. But they can, you can get people there. You can get there yourselves. And it's not even getting people there. You have to get there yourselves. You have to have an awakening. You have to start understanding life. Once you start looking at life and you start looking at things differently, then you'll understand that, the way that you're doing things, if it's not working, if it hasn't been working for you thus far, then maybe we need to do something different. Maybe we need to stop depending on other people to create us into who we are or who we need to be. Maybe I need to, look at me, look at myself personally, and I need to create myself into who I want to be, because you literally can change your whole reality. You can change your whole world. You can change your whole being just by changing your personality. That's where it all starts. Once you change that personality, then you start, looking different and acting different and glowing different, and people will start to see it. And your anger starts to come down. You start turning that volume down because the anger volume be like all the way on 10, and then your loving volume be on, you know, maybe point 0.5. So when you got that anger volume on 10, who wants to deal with that? It's loud. Nobody wants to deal with that. But when you start turning the anger volume down, it'll start to come down, and then the loving volume will start to come up, and people will start to see it. They'll start to see differences in you, and people will start wanting to deal with you differently. They'll come and start talking to you more. When you walk in stores, or when you're just in public and people look at you and you have a different glow on your face, you don't look so confrontational. When you're walking around with this confrontational look on your face, nobody wants to deal with that. You look rough. You look like you're ready to fight. It's like you got to calm down. You got to breathe. You got to enjoy life. We're on this planet to enjoy life. We're here. We're having an experience. So our energy is never going anywhere. Our energy has circled around here so many times. And, it's like you're going to keep coming back and repeating all of these cycles until you figure this out. And the next time around may be worse than this time around. You never know. So, if this right now, this message is for someone who just wants to start learning how to break that cycle, and get into their positive energy and get out of that negative energy. This right here is clear instructions on what you need to do. I feel like I've lived a million lifetimes because I've been through so much. And again, transparent moment. I've been to prison. I was a hard head, and I was running the streets, and because I was running with people who had this let's go get it mindset mentality, I was like, let's go get it. And I didn't have fear. And the reason why I didn't have fear is when if you go through trauma, you just don't have fear. You don't fear anything because you feel like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? I already been there, done that. That's already happened to me. So I went into life, I went into my teenage years with no fear, ran the streets, sat in these rooms with people that, like I said, didn't have any regard for human life. I didn't care. I wasn't afraid. So I'm running the streets. I'm doing all these different things. I wasn't afraid of any consequences. So got myself caught up, went to jail, went to prison. I went to Chowchilla. Yes, I was on the A yard. I was with the Manson girls, and I wasn't even there long. But that was just more so of them trying to break me down. But anyway, that's another story. But it says you have to break down fear. You have to think about why are you afraid? What are you afraid of? Why are we afraid of other people? Why are we, if you fear death, death is going to come. If you fear cancer, you're going to get cancer because the things that you fear, fear is a strong energy. So if you fear, I remember this happened. I bought a brand new car. It was my first time getting a car brand new off the lot. And I'm driving the car and I was like fearful of someone hitting the car. And I promise you, I had that car 2 weeks and somebody hit the car. And he didn't just hit the car, he like hit it and then he scurried into the door and then he turned out. And I mean, like, he just damaged the whole car. First car that I bought brand new off the lot. And that's because I drove around with this fear somebody's going to hit my car. Somebody's going to hit my car. And I saw that and I said, dang it. I was like, I knew it. I sat here and I brought this fear in and I made this happen because I carried this fear around, So you have to remember that fear is such a strong energy, and you have to let go of that fear. And that's one of the things too with us, with our black men, we fear going out and having a confrontation with the police. We fear these people coming and taking our lives when we're out just doing absolutely nothing. But you also have to come to the realization that this life is by design, and whatever happens, it's happening because of cause and effect. And I know people are, well, This person was out, jogging and he wasn't doing anything, and this person was driving and he didn't do anything. What would be the cause and effect? What would be the reason why these things happen? And the reason is because our creator, whatever you want to call your creator, I try to stay neutral, whether you call him God, Yahweh, Allah, Buddha, whatever you call him, our creator has a plan and it's a design. And, we fear death so much. And when you fear death so much, it's going to come to you. So you have to take that fear away because unfortunately, and this is that uncomfortable conversation nobody wants to have, unfortunately, everybody's going to die. We all going to die. It doesn't matter. Our children might die. And that's like a parent's biggest fear. You know, it's inevitable. It's what's going to happen. It's part of the human experience is death. It's something that we're all going to have to face and we're all going to have to go through. So you can't be afraid of it. When you live your life in fear, if you constantly are in fear of death, if you're constantly in fear of disease, if you're constantly in fear of natural disasters, if you're constantly in fear of, war, whatever, that fear, that energy is so strong that it's just going to take over you, and it's going to keep you from ever doing anything in your life because you're going to walk around fearful. When you're walking around with fear, you can't create. It's hard for your mind to be in a creative state when you're in fear or when you're in survival. Your brain, the way that it works is it needs to have a clear space for you to be creative. So a lot of people, they just automatically think that they're not creative, and it's not that you're not creative. It's just that you've conditioned your mind to be afraid of the unknown. And the unknown, because we know what's in the past, right? And we can almost kind of predict the future, but our unknown is where we're presently in right now. Like we don't know, the present moment right now. A lot of people are not present. Most of us are not present. We don't stay present because we're always waiting for like a future event to kind of shape what our future is going to be. As soon as I get this money, then I'll be able to go do this. Or as soon as this happens, or as soon as I can find the right person, then we could do this. Because now you're constantly waiting for that future event to happen, and you're not doing anything. You're waiting for that event to happen. You're not, moving towards it. You're just thinking that it's gonna just, pop, jump up and fall in your lap. But when you're living in your present moment and you become conscious of everything that's going on around you, and you get rid of your fears and you get rid of your anxieties and stress and anger and all these different things, you're living in the moment, then that's when you really can become creative and you can start to see things for what they are. And again, that's what happened. When COVID hit, we got present. We became present. We sat in the present moment. We had no choice. you know, we had no choice. We all had to sit down and we all had to, look at our families and look at our homes and look at everything that was going on around us. But that's what you want to do is every single day you want to live in the present moment. Every single day you need to, before you even get up, before you hit the ground running for your day, you got to stop. You got to sit there and you got to close your eyes and you got to think about what's going on around you right now. Don't think about your bills. Don't think about, what happened last week when somebody made you mad. Don't think about, man, I got to go get in this traffic. Dang, I got to go to this job. I can't stand these people. Because now you're anticipating this whole day, right? Because now you're saying, I can't stand these people. I hate going in here. I don't want to see nobody. So already you set the stage for this day. Already that day is set just based off of those feelings, right? And then you say, well, how do I get around that? Because I can't stand these people, right? But what you want to do is before you go to this job and there's people that's difficult at this job, just say to yourself, you know what? Today, when Bob come over and he starts yelling at me, I'm gonna smile at him. I'm gonna treat Bob a little differently today. because I need to deflect Bob. And if this is a situation that you're dealing with, I know some people are like, why would I smile at him? I can't stand him. And you could do one of two things. You can either go in and you can shine a little bit of love into a situation, or you can go in and excuse me, or you could put the negativity into a situation, right? So Bob is, say Bob come in every single day, he's screaming and hollering at you, he's mad, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, right? And then you get combative. Right now, you and Bob are combative with each other, and you guys are fighting, and you guys keep going on the same hamster wheel every single day. But then, say you change it around one day, and then Bob comes in, and he come in and he's screaming and hollering, and you just, hey Bob, how's everything going? You know what? I know this is a stressful job. I get it. I'll get on it right away. So what's gonna happen is instantly Bob is gonna stop in his tracks, and he's gonna look, and he's gonna be like, that was different. You know, I'm not saying that you're not trying to change Bob, because you can't. You can't change him. You're trying to change you, because Bob, there's no way that he's going to come back at you as harsh as he just did when you come to him in that way. So now what you've done is you start creating kind of like, a little field around yourself, because when you start emanating love, that light, that light that forms around you, it gets really strong, and people will start to see it. And then they know that they have to treat you a different way. They have to talk to you a different way. But when you're, combative and you got the dark field around you, then everything dark will come at you. And, because now you're attracting, dark attracts dark, light attracts light. So again, we're not trying to change Bob. You know, we're only trying to change ourselves, and we're trying to change the energy that's around us. And if you have to be in that job and you have to be there every single day and you have to deal with this person Bob, then you have to change your reality so that way you can deal with these situations. You know, I was watching this thing also, and they were talking about, in slavery, and how evil these white people were, and that they didn't have any empathy for us. Of course, they didn't have no empathy for us. Those people don't care about us. And that's the problem, is that we're always looking for empathy or sympathy, or we're looking for, some type of, some type of confirmation, or, whatever it is we're looking from these people, and we're not going to get it. So when you're constantly looking for this and you're not going to get it, you're constantly you're letting yourself down, because you're expecting something from somebody that they're not going to give you. And then we go all the way back to my beginning question of us, and are we staying in slavery too long? It's because we're constantly looking for these people to treat us a certain way, and we know that they're not going to treat us this way. We know that, that they don't. And of course, again, I'm going to say this isn't for every white person. This doesn't apply to every black person. This doesn't apply to all of us, but it's for the masses. You know, we have to stop looking to other people. We have to stop looking to all these external forces to justify who we are as people. Because the more that you try to create yourself based on what's going on around you, then you become a product of that. And do you want to become a product of someone else's vision of you, or do you want to become a product of your own vision of you? So we really have to stop depending on people. And what's the steps to that? The steps to that is, I look at people in the South and Atlanta and all these other places, and I see they're buying land, and they're starting to build up, different little areas for themselves. And I know I've talked to quite a few black people, and I was on this whole kick in 2019. I was like, we need to go buy land. We need to go off the grid. We need to get out of here. And everybody's like, no, we can't do that. We can't go live off the grid. And I'm like, why? Well, because there's nothing out there. Nothing like what? Well, we're gonna have to separate ourselves, and then we're gonna be out there by ourselves, and then we're gonna be alone, and and I'm like, but that's the whole point. If you have you build a house and it's on a cracked foundation, and then you start building the house, and now the house is leaning to the side, right? So pretty soon you start to see that, man, this house is so messed up. I'm gonna have to tear this whole house down. You can't just tear down the house, you got to tear down the foundation. And our foundation is so full of cracks. Our foundation is so shabby. And I'm talking about Black America's foundation here in this country. We don't have a foundation. Our foundation is rocks. We don't even have a stable foundation. So all of that, at one point, it's going to have to be torn down. And the unfortunate thing about people is we wait for trauma. We wait for a traumatic experience. We have to wait for we wait until it's the worst case scenario before we fix something. Excuse me. We wait until that happens. So we'll wait until they tear our foundation for us. They're going to tear that down. And then we have to rebuild. But then we'll have to rebuild with the tools that they give us. So then again, we're building our foundation based on what somebody else is giving to us. But if we start right now to tear down this foundation ourselves, and we start to rebuild it ourselves, and we start to do it with our own work, then we can go in and build something that's a little bit more stable for us. I hear a lot of us say that we can't build nothing here in this country because, of course, every time we've built something up, they've torn it down. And again, we're living in fear. We're living in the fear that if we build something, they're going to come and tear it down. And then I know some of us are, leaving, going to other countries, going to Africa, going to different places and trying to build there. But again, it's just, it's hard for us to go build a place for us or build a foundation somewhere, in Africa, because we don't have that connectedness this there, because we've been detached from it for so long. So we have to find a place. We have to find our place. And, quite honestly, we don't want to continuously live under the rules and the governments that America has in place for us, only because this government really still in their constitution doesn't even have us written in as actual human beings. But we do have to find our place. We have to find somewhere, and if that is separating ourselves from these major cities, that's the problem, is we're a part of these major cities, and these major cities have these police officers and these different constructs in place that work against us. So if we start putting ourselves in different places and we start building up these little small cities, what happens when you go by a city, or when you go buy land, I'm sorry, when you go buy land, you can incorporate that into a city. And when you incorporate a city, then you can go pick your mayor, right? And then you pick your sheriff, and then the sheriff, he picks his deputy, and now you've incorporated a town, and you put together your own little construct, and now you put together your bylaws, and and you start putting together your own infrastructure. But most Black people, they don't want to leave major cities because that's where the fun is at. Black people, we just love to have fun. you know, we love to drink, we love to smoke, we love to eat, we love to party. We just love to have fun, and that's it. We don't care about nothing else. We're just, and there's nothing wrong with having fun, but we have to look at the fun that we're having. And how is it impacting us as people, and as a society, and as a culture, because we're engulfed in his fun. We're not doing things that are fun to us. The things that we're seeing as fun is destructive. So again, I say we have to tear down this whole foundation, this rocky foundation that we have, and we need to start really making action moves towards building up a new foundation. Because if we don't, if we don't, we're going to continuously live in the conditions that we're living in. And around this world, globally, people of color are by far, the most populous people on this planet. But we allow a minority of people to have control over us. How does that happen? It happens because they keep us separated. It happens because they make all of us feel like we're an individual, and we don't have the connectedness, like I said earlier. And if we don't feel the connectedness, then we're not feeling that love for each other. So we're not protecting each other. And as long as we stay individual like that, then we can never come together and we can never build. You know, the church was, for me, I grew up in church. I wasn't always in church. When did we start going to church? I think I was about 8 years old. I know at one point my mom we lived in a white neighborhood, and she used to put us on a bus and send us to this white church. And we would jump off the bus and go to Burger King and take our offering money and go buy French fries and sit in Burger King all day. But I think somewhere around 8 or 9, we started going to a church in Monrovia, California. And then my mom, she went like all in. We were back in church, and because she grew up in the church, but we was at church on Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sunday. We were in church all the time. And even as a little girl, it was something just about the church. you know Something was just, I knew there was something that we were missing in the church. I knew there was something that we were doing, that maybe needed to be, fixed a little bit. And I never, I no disrespect to any religion, because I grew up in a Christian home. And then I also I didn't fully join, but I started going to the mosque, and, I was with the Nation of Islam for a little while. Then I went to school and I studied religions. I've taken theologies and Bible literatures, and I've taken all these different courses, um, to learn about religion. And kind of came to the conclusion that it's a spirituality. But even like I said, the church is something, not just the church, just religions, is something that keeps us more separate as people than anything. It really does cause a separation in the way that we think, and the way that we believe. And we get so vehemently emotional about our belief systems. And a lot of times, our beliefs are just things that we have learned, things that someone else has taught us. And we become so passionate about these beliefs. And even when we don't have all the full information, because we just have to go off of what we feel. We have to go off of the feeling that it gives us. So I don't speak bad about church, because some people really need to be in the church, because the church is teaching discipline and laws. And that's, part of the problem today, is a lot of people don't have discipline. And we live in a society today where people don't want to live by laws. Nobody wants to be regulated. And they feel like their freedoms are being taken away when they have to adhere by laws. And I keep hitting this thing. And they think that's an infringement on their freedom. But you have to remember that everything has law and order. Nature has laws. Everything, the universe has laws. We wouldn't even be in existence if there wasn't laws. And you have to learn how to discipline yourself to these laws, and you have to learn how to follow them. And you know, discipline is just the act of letting your mind be stronger than the body. When you say you go on a diet and you see something and you really want to eat it, when you really want to eat it, that's more the body. The body is like, I need that. I need to go get that thing because, that's what I want. That's what I'm craving. And the discipline comes in when your mind gets stronger than that. And your mind says, nope, you don't need that. That's not what you need. We're going to go get something that's healthier and we're going to nourish the body properly. So that's the discipline that you have to start learning how to incorporate in yourself. But, just going back to the church and the laws and the discipline that it puts in, that's what people need. We need those laws. We need that discipline. But we also have to, the church has to learn that, it's more so the love that needs to be incorporated into the church. It's you have to learn, if you're going to be teaching a message of God, that message is incomplete if it doesn't include love. If it doesn't teach you how to love people, if it doesn't teach you how to, that message has to teach you how to love everybody. And I'm not talking about love your enemies and turn the other cheek, because I'm not talking about putting yourself in danger. But I'm talking about, loving other people regardless of what their views are, what their what their religious beliefs are. Loving people regardless of, if it's different from what you think. You have to learn how to emanate that love to other people, and that's really what I feel religion is missing, is that love and that respect. And honestly, I feel like, I told somebody before, I was like, we have to tear down that the construct of church. We have to tear down that structure. And they're like, no, you can't do that. You can't tear down the church. And I think they missed what I'm saying. We were given one part of religion. We was given his story of religion. We was given the part of it that didn't pertain to us. So y'all can come for me if you want to on this, but the New Testament really wasn't written for us, and that's what the church focuses on. The churches today, they focus so much on the New Testament, but that New Testament really was not written for us. The New Testament is a way of tearing down the laws and the discipline, and that is the truth. The New Testament, it teaches you that there was a new way of doing things, right? But what the New Testament speaks of and saying that no words should be added to this book is such a contradictory, because the words added to that book are the words of the New Testament. And I can get into that conversation at another date because that conversation will go on forever, But it tears down the laws and it tears down the discipline. That's why, we have young girls that are in churches now that, are out clubbing and partying, and then they roll themselves into church. And, I know people will be like, well, there's nothing wrong with that. We're just having fun. Again, you have to think about what kind of fun are you having? What kind of fun are you having? So I just think, there's certain things that, we need to look at differently, and we have to look at it with a different eye. And we have to look at, who's, we have to look at, I know y'all gonna, we have to look at the people that are at the forefront of these things, at the forefront of these churches, right? And you have to remember that churches ran as a business. And anytime that something is being ran as a business, they're in the business of making money or making profit. That's the same thing with the healthcare industries and, mental care facilities, all of this stuff. They make so much money off of people. So are they really in the business of trying to heal you? No, they're not. They're not in the business of trying to heal. They're in the business of, keeping you coming back for more, because that's how they make their profit. And the more that you come, the more that you sit in, the more that you listen, or the more that you go get your medications, or the more that you go back and forth to the doctor, then the more money that they make. And that's the same thing with the churches. They are in the business of religion. And it's so hard for us to say as black people that we're all going to come together and we're going to try to build a solid frame, we're try a solid structure on something, when so many of our people who are at the top of these organizations are in it just for profit. So it's hard to know where do we go, if we are trying to build, if we're trying to rebuild. It's hard to know, you know who do we trust. That's another big issue with us as well, is our trust factors, and who do we trust, and how do we implement this thing, and how do we start doing something different. How do we get ourselves into a position to even rebuild, to build an infrastructure? How do we pull ourselves out of these traumas? How do we change our personalities? How do we change the energy fields around us? It's so many hows. But I think we look and we study things too long. I remember my dad used to say, "Think long, think wrong." We just have to get in there, and we just really have to start changing up who we are. You have to start changing your personality. You have to start changing your energy. You have to start changing the way that you do things, and start changing the way that you treat people, the way that you treat yourself. If you start loving yourself, and you start learning how to be in that energy, and you start learning how to vibrate so high, all the people that have negative energy, they're going to be left down here, because now your energy is going to elevate you up here. And all those other people, and those people that are on a negative energy force, those are the people in the clubs, and those are the people that cause drama at your job, or those are the abusive men or abusive women. All those people are going to stay down here. You're not even going to deal with those people anymore, because now you're going to elevate yourself up here. And that's just strictly by learning to love yourself, learning how to get into your higher vibrational energy, by unpacking your past, by getting rid of that trauma, dealing with the trauma. Go back, look at it, analyze it. All right. After you go back and you look at it and you analyze it, then leave it there. Leave it where it's at. And again, like I say, my past was ugly, but honestly, I wouldn't change one bit of it. And I know that, it might sound crazy to some, but I wouldn't change it, because it's made me who I am. That was the framework to make me into the person that I am today. And I always tell my kids, I bumped my head a million times so that you guys wouldn't have to, because now I can go back and tell you guys all the things that I did and all the things that I did wrong. And now you can either listen to what I tell you, and you can take this path that I'm showing you, or if you need to go bump your head yourself, then, hey, go take that path. But for the most part, my kids, they listened. They listened. I raised 5 kids in Las Vegas, and all of them are, I have 2 at home, but the older ones, all successful, all doing good, all doing big things, never got caught up in this Las Vegas life. And people will tell you that Las Vegas may be one of the worst places to raise your children, because there's so many different things going on here. But we eluded all of that, but like I said, you just have to take that trauma and unpack it, and leave it where it's at, and stop living in it. Because when you live in your trauma, you become a victim, and you walk around with a victim mentality. You walk around every single day as a victim. And when you live as a victim, you start, like I said, you start romanticizing your trauma, and you start, you talk about it, and you live in it, and it becomes you, and it becomes your personality. And you don't want to stay in your traumatic past. You want to, like I say, use that as your framework of what built you up to who you are today. But then you close the door on that, and now you start looking towards the future. You start looking at who you want to be and who you want to become, and you start looking at the life that you want. And then you start getting into the emotion of that. You start feeling all that emotion of how you're going to feel when you become that person. How you're going to feel when you get these things that you want. What is it that's going to justify, you being happy? You start looking at that and start living towards that instead of living what's behind you, you know. And that's what we have to do with slavery. That's what we have to do with slavery. We have to start realizing that, yes, slavery happened, and I'm going to say something else that may be a little controversial, but, when you look at the Jewish people, they went through the Holocaust, right? And I know people will, debate on how many Jewish people were killed, but that's not the point. The point is it happened. And, honestly, we know that certain people get more advantages than others, right? So we know that they were given more opportunity and more advantages. But they saw a future that they wanted, right? And they went and they started creating that. And that's what they're living in. They're living in what they've created for themselves. But we still sit around and we still, kind of relish in our past. And we talk so much about what we don't have or what we can't have rather than, moving forward and creating something different for ourselves. We sit around and we wait for these people to give us something, knowing that they're not going to. We sit around and wait for them to hand us another opportunity, or we wait for them to hand us another stimulus check, or we wait for them to hand us something. And, we're constantly waiting for someone handing us an external, you know, uh, resource in order for us to move forward. And we're never going to move forward like that. So, bottom line is we have to come out of slavery. We have to come out of the slavery mentality. We have to let slavery be where it is. And, regardless of if you've had trauma in your life, regardless of if you're sick, regardless of what you're going through in life, I know people that have healed their body just through mind work, just through thinking that their body was going to heal. You can think your body into healing. The mind is very powerful, and we have to learn how to start using it properly. Once we really start learning how to use the mind properly, then we start setting ourselves up to be into the future that we see for ourselves, and we stop living in this past that they've laid out for us. So that's what we really need to focus on. So where we at? I don't know how much time I have left here, but I just wanted to make sure that, this is the way that we open up the show, and this is what we're going to talk about. These are the things that we're going to have to dive into, and we're going to have these uncomfortable conversations. We're going to talk about things that, that need to be dealt with. And that's what we're going to do here on Elevate Us. That's what we did. The whole idea of elevating us, like I said in the beginning, is to get us here. All right, get us from here to here. And we, as Black people, we are the most talented. We are the most hardworking. We are the most resourceful people on this planet. So everything that we need to rebuild is within us. I mean, we built this country. This country was built on the backbone of our ancestors. So we built this. So if we did it for them, why can't we do it for us? We definitely can do it for us. But we got to come together. We have to come together. We have to stop looking at us as individuals. We have to start learning how to love each other. We need to let that love energy start connecting us. And we need to, get more into this human experience. So that's what we're going to have to start talking about too, is this human experience. And once we start getting into this human experience and realizing that, you know, we are having an you know, we're in a physical form, but we're having it's a spiritual experience. You know, once we start to realize that the body is just mass, but it's the mind. You know, it's the mind and it's the emotions that really can, you know, put you, fast forward you into the reality that you want to be into. That's what we need to really kind of focus on, is, you know, getting ourselves out of this physical form. If you're not happy with where you're at in life, you know, get out of your physical and get more into your spiritual, get more into your energy. So let me see. I think that is about it for this episode. I think that's all we're going to talk about today. You know, I got a lot of different conversations that we can dive into, and also, you know, we'll start getting some people in here, start getting some conversations going, and see how people feel. Let me know what you think. Let me know your comments. You know, if you do want to be a guest on the show, contact me. Let me know. You can reach me on Facebook at Elena Smith under my name, ELLENASMITH, or you could reach me on Instagram, and that one is easydays_wellness or elevate us. You can contact me there, or you can also contact me on YouTube. On YouTube, I have another small podcast that I do with my niece, and it's Elevate Life, and that one we're talking, you know, more so on dating right now, but you can contact me there as well. And let me see, on TikTok, what am I under TikTok? I think I'm under Easy Days Wellness on TikTok also. So also you can email me at elevate us, ELLEVATEUS, elevate us at gmail.com. And I think that's everything. I think I hit them all. So join me again next week. Let's have these conversations, you know, and let's start picking some things apart. Let's start tearing down this rocky foundation so we can build up this beautiful mansion that we want to visualize ourselves living in. All right? All right. Elevate us.